As some of you I know picked up on, there was a very specific reason why, week after week, for the last 9 weeks, 10 weeks, I guess, if you count all the honorable mentions that we had last week, I have called this a list of the greatest promos / interviews in WWE history. That was not done by accident. And in fact, you can call this a promo anyway. I mean, it doesn't really matter what you call it. I mean, promo is short for promotional. And this was certainly something that was meant to promote this particular character on TV and help get him over in a way that they had not done before this. So you can use either word, it would be appropriate. Mick Foley will go down as one of the greatest promo guys in the history of the business. I don't think anybody could really argue that point. Had I opened this list up to promos outside of WWE, his Kane Dewey promo from ECW would have easily been in the top 3. I said that when I started this countdown. I mentioned Dusty Rhodes' Hard Times. I mentioned Kane Dewey. Like, those are the two that I singled out. They were non-WWE promos. That's the only reason why they weren't on this list. We've seen glimpses of the Foley of old on Raw recently, but I would hate for any new fans to see Foley now and be like, oh, what's so special about this guy? You know, he just shouts all the time on TV and wears funny suits. I want people to go back and I want them to watch his work as Mankind, because for all the love that Cactus Jack gets, you know, Mankind is the persona that I miss the most. And it is his sit-down interview with Jim Ross from Raw in 1997 as Mankind that tops my list of the best promos in WWE history at number 1. This was a pre-taped sit-down interview that he did with Jim Ross. It was JR had just done one of these with Goldust and Marlena. It was the first, I think, in what they had planned to be a series of these pseudo-shoot type interviews. It really was just one long interview, but they cut it up. They divided it into 4 parts that aired for 4 consecutive weeks. A month on Raw, they aired these things. May 19th, May 26th, June 2nd, and June 9th of 1997. For those who want to hit it up on the network and watch them all. This was Foley's second year in the company as Mankind. He had wrapped up a great feud with The Undertaker. In fact, I consider Mankind to be Undertaker's greatest rival. More than Kane, more than Shawn Michaels. I mean, they may have had better matches together, but there was no greater rival for The Undertaker than Mankind. He was the perfect opponent for The Undertaker in every way. They had just rekindled their feud after Taker won the championship at WrestleMania. They had a championship match on the Revenge of the Taker show in April. And then came this interview. And up to this point, we really didn't know too much about the man behind the mask. All they told us was that he was deranged, he lived in the boiler room. This interview introduced us to a side of the Mankind character that we had never seen before. And JR was the perfect person to handle this kind of interview. I mean, for a lot of different reasons. JR, I just think of Vince and Lawler and Jim Ross. Jim Ross was the perfect person to do a sit-down, like, in-depth interview anyway. But given the relationship that he had with Foley and even behind the scenes in real life, you know, the role that he played in bringing Foley into the company, which Vince McMahon did not want. And he finally told JR, you know, Vince did, he said, okay, we'll sign him, but it's on your head if he fails. And you gotta remember, we didn't see interviews like this on WWE television back then. I mean, we're all spoiled now with all the, you know, the documentaries they do on the network and the specials. But in 97, again, that Goldust interview was the first time they really had done anything even remotely like this. And then along comes this one. And what it did was, it didn't just turn Mankind into a sympathetic babyface. And I don't know if, you know, that was their intention or not, but that's what it did. They created a star, is what they did. Before he was, you know, a superstar on the roster, they made him a star. They got him on that pathway to being more than just Mankind. Because now we had a little bit of insight into the mind behind Mankind, right? Into the person behind the mask. This Cactus Jack guy, Dude Love, man, all that stuff. For the very first time. They made him a star. Maybe not on the level of Steve Austin, but Foley became a big star in his own right. You could trace it, I think, back to this interview. This gave fans that didn't know him from the Cactus Jack days a reason to care about this guy. He wasn't just some sick freak with half an ear who, had a pet rat. All of a sudden, they added layers to the character. Even if parts of the story were obviously embellished, it was a mix of fantasy and reality. And I said this earlier in the countdown with the Bret Hart stuff. Some of the best promos are just that. They're a mix of fantasy and reality. And it helps that Foley is one of the greatest storytellers I've ever seen. Not every wrestler can talk the way that he does. Now, some background on this from Foley's first book. The original concept was pitched to him by Kevin Dunn. And the original concept was he would do the interview as himself, as Mick Foley, without the mask. So it wouldn't be Mankind, it would be Mick Foley. And Foley actually said, no, I prefer using the mask. I've kind of gotten used to it. I wear it for hours in advance before my matches. So I would prefer to do it with the mask. Obviously, he got what he wanted. And here's the most incredible thing about this. You're going to listen to almost 20 minutes of audio, lots of stories, lots of little details. And Foley claimed that aside from him attacking JR at the end, which was obviously planned out, nothing was scripted. He ad-libbed everything. What he may have written down on a piece of paper the night before, and I don't know. But there was no script handed to him. He didn't have a word-for-word thing that he had to rehearse from or anything like that. He ad-libbed the whole thing. He came up with this in his mind. He had a plan, obviously, for what he wanted to talk about. I'm going to talk about this story and that story of when I was in school and when I was on the airplane. He ad-libbed the whole thing. Now imagine them doing an interview like that today. And if they did, finding someone as good as Foley who could pull it off. I say good luck with that. Vince McMahon was there in studio while this whole thing was filmed. He was watching in the background. And Foley said that when they were done, Vince came up to him and told him that this was the most captivating thing he had ever seen. It was a huge turning point in this guy's career because he knew that in that moment, he won over Vince. And that's not an easy thing to do. The same guy, the same Vince, who told Jim Ross, he's your responsibility, it's on you if you want to sign the guy, now was finally behind the guy. And Foley says that this interview is on his list as one of the 3 best things that he has ever done. Not just in WWE, ever in his career. I used to talk about how cringy those monologues were that Kane used to do on SmackDown in, it's like 2010, I think it was, where they play the dramatic music in the background, but that was because it just didn't fit with him being out in front of the live crowd. And plus, a lot of the dialogue with Kane back then was just ridiculous. Here, the background music, I think, really fit. And I love how when Foley starts to get angry there at the end, if you notice, the music just cuts out. I like the way they did that. I like that a lot. This was the world's first introduction to Dude Love, you heard there in this interview. They showed the video of him jumping off his friend's roof. The summer saw him then debut the Dude Love character on TV a couple months after this aired on TV. And he won the tag team titles with Steve Austin. Austin had been teaming with Shawn Michaels, and then Shawn got hurt. Or it may have been after his little backstage cat fight with Bret. When Shawn tried to leave, I was wondering if he tried to leave then and go to WCW and tried to cite, unsafe working environment. And Vince is like, I'm not letting you go to WCW, dude. You want to sit at home for the next 4 years in your contract, you can, but you're not going to WCW. So Shawn was gone for a while, and Austin needed a new tag team partner. And Mankind, I remember Mankind would wear a sign around his neck every single week for like weeks and weeks that said, "Pick me, Steve." And eventually, out came Dude Love, and they became partners. And then after WrestleMania, go, fast forward the following year in 98, after WrestleMania, again, Shawn Michaels is hurt. He goes away for a while. Who was the beneficiary again of Shawn being gone? It was Mick Foley. Second time. He got 2 pay-per-view main events with Steve Austin, both as Dude Love. The second of those matches being one of my favorite matches ever, the one at Over the Edge. And then the month after that, he was back to being Mankind again, back to feuding with The Undertaker. And they had a match, I think, may have been inside of a cage. I think something big happened there. I can't really remember. But no, there you have it. The greatest promo/interview of all time in WWE history, call it whatever you want, goes to Mick Foley.